The Cynic, the Rat, and the Fist. Perhaps Umberto Lenzi intended this to be the good, the bad, and the ugly of his Poliziotteschi films. This is something of a sequel to the 1976 feature Rome Armed to the Teeth. It features the same protagonist, Leonardo Tanzi, the police inspector, portrayed by Mauricio Merli. I have to say, at this point, having seen several of Lenzi's Poliziotteschi with Merli as a police commissioner, inspector, it's such an entertaining, comfortable side at this point. He really just nails the role. And also, once again, the villain is portrayed by Thomas Milan, portraying a character known as Luigi Maetto, known as the Chinaman, an underworld kingpin whom Tanzi deems is so dangerous and so clever that his elimination alone will relieve the police force of so much of the crime within the city. Maetto is the Chinaman, is trying to achieve a deal with the American-born John Saxon portrayed Frank DiMaggio. This film probably has the most interesting role for Mauricio Merli's cop protagonist. What happens here is they decide that they're going to fake his death in order to, I guess, embolden the criminal activities of the criminal underbosses. And so what they decide to do, even though Merli, his character Tanzi, he's decided that he's gonna take a break from active duty, and he's editing crime novels, but then they attempt to hit him. He's injured in the proceedings, but then they decide to announce that in newspapers, and the newspapers are complicit in this, of course, that, Tanzi was murdered. He died of his injuries, and so Tanzi works undercover, and he gradually slips his way through the world of Rome, and they're going to find out the information about how they're going to bring down Maetto. He wants to turn Maetto, the Chinaman, Thomas Milan's character, against John Saxon's character. And I don't want to spoil anything. Yeah, he's successful at that. It's quite an entertaining Lenzi Poliziotteschi rom. One gets the feeling, given the nature of the storyline and the attempts at more of a scope within this particular picture, that Lenzi did want this to be, I guess, something of the good, the bad, the ugly of his cop films up to that point. I'd like to read out an older IMDb review from Aylmer, that's Aylmer, 2nd of December 2001, a typical yet excessively fun Italian police movie. This is probably the best example of a 70s Italian crime movie, though not the best movie of the genre. Does that make sense? It has, besides Saxon, an entirely Italian cast, but most of them are pretty recognisable regulars in very amusing roles. Mauricio Merli is best as the role he was born to play, that of yet another ticked-off police commissioner. His very charismatic yet level-headed performance is the one thing that keeps this movie moving along so well, and it is notable that of Lenzi's crime movies, this is probably the one that entrusts Merli with the most screen time, besides From Corleone to Brooklyn, though that is not so much a crime movie. I don't know why I would say that. It's a pretty sloppily shot and haphazardly edited film, probably because most of Lenzi's films from this time were made with little money and over the span of 2 to 3 weeks, but has some very memorable shots. Merli charging across the footbridge, Merli pulling a bandage off of his newly healed arm, etc., and a killer soundtrack by Franco Michelisi, probably his best one. What's not to like about poorly dubbed Italians smacking each other, breaking chairs over each other's heads, shooting people in hospital beds, and stealing women's cars? The only weaknesses in this film are the fact that the heist sequence is far too long and drawn out, and the ending shootout is too quick and confusing, centering only on Milan versus Merli when there is a whole gang war going on. Otherwise, a solid and action-packed film. It should also be noted that this probably has the most swearing of any 70s Italian movie, at least in the English version, making it the polar opposite of The Big Racket. We're nearing the end of our run of Umberto Lenzi crime films, and this one was probably one of the better of them. There was an attempt at a real screenplay here, and even though the screenwriter of this film wound up denouncing the finished product, I like the ambition that they managed to secure, scourge from his, ring from something that the screenwriter themselves disliked, but nevertheless, fun stuff, I think.